All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, supporting online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another conversation on guts, grit, and great business. I am super excited to bring back Coach Jacob Roig today. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, Heather.
We're gonna have a great time. And if you don't know Coach Jacob, first of all, there's a couple things I want to mention. How long have we known each other now? It's been a hot minute. It's been a while.
How old's your son?
Right? He's 11.
So 12 years.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
There you have, there's the marker. So Jacob and I have known each other for a while, and I would say I almost consider Jacob like family because we've had so many conversations over the years. Jacob, you coached me for a time at the start of my building my second business, which was super impactful, really meaningful for me. And anyways, Jacob is one of my favorite people. So you should know that before we even have the conversation. I have a strong bias. And you should go back and check out episode number 19, because he was also one of the earliest guests on this podcast when it launched at the start of COVID. Anyways, welcome back, Jacob. I'm super happy to have you here. I'm going to reintroduce you because for folks that don't know Jacob, you need to hear about what he's up to. But stick around because you're going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. And I can say that confidently without a doubt. The one other tidbit I will add is that my first introduction to you was listening to you coach a whole group of people on phone calls week after week after week. And you know, being in the legal space and being a strategist and knowing what it takes to problem solve, I just remember how clearly, like at the end of each call, I was like, Jacob is so insightful and he tells people exactly the right step to go do. And you got such an array of questions, of people on those calls, of backgrounds, business types, and you always had something of tremendous value to add for them. And anyways, I remember just how profound that group coaching experience was, because I don't know, honestly, that I've ever seen anybody handle quite an array of questions so adeptly.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can honestly say there were a lot of times I had no clue either. Sometimes you lean into trust and belief, right?
Right. Well, and this is the very intuitive part of you that I think comes through in your coaching, right? And if you stick around for this conversation, you'll get a really good sense of just the power of Jacob's coaching, because it's more than just, you know, like practical business knowledge. It also, you really have a spiritual and intuitive component to the way that you work with your clients. So for those of you that don't know Jacob Roig of Next Level Business Coaching helps business owner entrepreneurs to grow their business and create more profit, income, and time off. Ding, ding, ding. He works a lot on pricing formula to generate profit for his clients on each transaction, and then shares how to pay for the next hire before they are acquired so that you can grow your business and the time off required to grow it, refine it, and make it profitable. He brings over 30 combined years of working with businesses and coaching business owners to grow and scale. He's helped hundreds of business owners break free from holding back, spinning their wheels in hesitation, doubt, or the thought that you can't afford it, right? And you really can't afford thoughts that are holding you back. Jacob is not just any coach. He is a road tested coach. And actually, before we went live, he put on a baseball cap that says road tested. I think you need to bring it back, Jacob, because this conversation is also going to show up in a video recording. I love it. He started 6 businesses from ideas and a shoestring budget, has grown 2 of them to 7 figures, and has been running his own coaching company for 15 years. He's learned both from failures and successes and creates roadmaps to guide you, help you plan out step by step, and help you stay committed, accountable to make sure you reach the finish line of your success. Jacob, I'm so happy to have you back. And even in that last paragraph, something that comes to mind that I think is probably super applicable to what you do is thinking about the number of entrepreneurs that get started, get midway on the path, and they're in this zone where things are working, but not really working the way they want them to. It's like they're successful enough that they've got a solid foundation, but they're still not achieving true, whether it's financial freedom, business freedom, right? And it ends up being a little bit of this trap.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? I feel like there's a lot of folks that get to that place and they can't go back, but they're not really sure how to go forward either.
Yeah, many are there, even a lot that don't admit it publicly.
Yes.
Because on the surface, we can look tremendous. Oh, how are things? Things are good. Things are great.
This is
But
just like your recent LinkedIn post, right?
yeah,
Like this
yeah.
was it. Yeah.
And, on the surface, especially because social media has become so prevalent, and all that we see usually is what's great. Oh, look at me. I've done this in 3 months or 2 years. I've been able to do all these things. And what's forgotten is that it takes what it really takes to get there.
Yeah.
The most successful people, let's take entertainers. I remember one person, and I'm not particularly a fan or against this person, but Madonna. I remember her success started at 18, but she had been at it since 3 years old. So she's a 15-year overnight success, right?
Yeah.
Most of us as business owners, we go through these phases, and what we end up is there's no real training that says this is it. They tell you steps, but they don't tell you what's in between, the emotional things or how not to do certain things. And what a lot of us end up doing is we create a business in theory, but what we do is we create a really low paying job for the amount of time, effort, and hours that we put into it.
Yes.
And I really get people at that stage, whether they realize they're there or not. Because when I start relating to them, they're like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And
Yes.
it becomes like, yes, I created this job.
Totally.
And you know it too, Heather, just, with having an efficient assistant now versus when you were doing it all on your own, and how much better and more impactful it is, but also how much lighter it makes your business become, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just got back from a 10-day trip to the UK, and I told my assistant, I said, this is the first time I've been able to go on a significant trip and not open an email, not worry about anything happening back home in my business, right? I knew it was handled, and we'd set ourselves up beforehand so that it would be handled, and I knew what she was up to. And it's, as something as small as that, just having the systems, the people, and I say small, but it can take some time to build that in and actually get that level of support working for you, even inside of a small or micro business, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And one a good nugget to write down right now would be understanding your own level of patience and ability to be able to teach or train somebody. A lot of business owners at this level where they're ready to take it to that next step get stuck because they'll hire someone cheap. And not saying cheap isn't a good idea. It only is, though, if you have the time, patience, and desire to groom somebody that's going to take you minimum probably 90 days to groom them where they start becoming unconscious, versus hiring someone for 3 to 10 times the price you pay for cheap. But you get somebody that within 2 to 3 weeks is your right hand.
Yes.
And so you have to weigh the cost of the investment and the return on it too. So if you're ready to grow your business, don't always look at what's the least expensive, especially when you're looking at assistants to start taking over. Because we've heard before, oh, I tried it before, but man, I ended up doing all the work. Yeah. Or, I just can't find good help. And so if you're saying that now, you got to look in the mirror. You're not that great of a manager yet, but we have to learn. Like, we're great self-managers as business owners,
Mm,
but we're usually not trained to manage other people. We
mm,
do things unconsciously that we don't think about. And when you're training and managing someone else, every single step has to be thought out and processed out. They have a process for it. And if you're not that patient to do it, you're better off hiring someone at a higher level. They'll pay for themselves very quickly versus somebody at a much lower level that might take you months and a lot of frustration and a lot of you pulling away from things that you could be productive at. So just a quick nugget there, but this whole journey is, as a business owner slash entrepreneur, isn't it a great uh, inner journey? Like you find out so much about yourself, right?
mhm. Oh, it's 100%. There's no better personal growth, self-development journey than the entrepreneurial path, in my opinion, right?
Yep, I agree. And then another block or obstacle that you run up to is, when can I afford to grow? And
Yes.
most people will start expanding their business at their expense. And that's a myth. It doesn't have to happen. The
Mm.
same as the lie that I believed in my first business, which was you don't pay yourself for the first year.
Oh,
There's nobody here that's listening to this that would go work for somebody else and you walk in and they say, oh, great to have you. We're not going to pay you for a whole year. And then you go, oh, okay, no problem. You'd go, I'm out of here. So if that's the case in life, if you go somewhere else, why would you do that to yourself when you're in control of everything?
right.
So
Well,
that's the derivative, or that was the driving force in part for my pricing for profit formula. My
mm,
my first business, I went from yellow page sales rep to basically bathroom installation. I was doing bathtub liners and wall systems. So paper hands, never gonna have my toolbox was a screwdriver, a
you weren't doing
hammer,
the
right,
installations.
and a butter knife, right? That was my toolbox, right? So what I knew right off the bat was I was going to create a sales company that happened to do what I did, and I needed to find people to do the work because I wasn't going to do that part of it. And so that whole journey from the start, it started out with that premise, and I just had meteoric growth. I realized how valuable marketing was, and people said spend 5 to 7% of your gross on your
Mhm.
marketing, and I spent 15 to 30
Oh,
because
wow.
I knew I had to educate people on this product. Plus, I had to get business, and it worked. And
Mm,
so what happened was I had this meteoric growth, but I wasn't growing as a manager at that same level. So I lost some really good people in the process. But at
mm,
6 months in, we're doing 50 to 80,000 a month in sales. And I had a mentor who said, hey, are you profitable? And I said, oh, yeah, we got all this money in the bank. And he goes, no, are you profitable? And I said, all this money in the bank. And he's like, are you profitable? Let's see. And he just took me through two things. He said, what are you spending? And I said, oh, I'm spending this much money. And what are you taking in? What's left at the end? And I realized at that point, my installers were making 300 bucks a day because they were installing one job a day. My sales reps were making 3 to 500, depending on the sale. And everyone else was getting paid their hourly rate. I wasn't taking any money in, so I was making zero. And my company total was $75 at the end of it. I also would pay if my installers messed up a panel, which cost me 180. No problem, right? I'll take care of it. I'm a nice guy. That was my management style. Nice
mm,
boy, nice guy. And I ended up realizing that I was losing money. And the only reason I was in business was because I was selling a lot.
yeah.
If my business slowed down for 60 days, I would have started imploding on myself. And that was a turnaround. I spent a whole weekend figuring out how I could price differently. And that started my pricing for profit formula that I use today with people. But
Mm,
over one weekend, we became profitable and I started paying myself immediately. And it worked.
amazing. How I'd love you to walk us through like kind of the points around like how people get pricing wrong. Because I think so many people are feeling like they're somewhere in that trap that we talked about, right? They are not necessarily sure how to fix it, and they may not realize pricing is part of the problem.
Yeah, pricing's most of the problem.
Most of the problem. There you go. You heard it from Jacob.
There's a book, Gary Keller, I think, wrote it, called The One Thing.
Hmm.
And in that book, he asks, what's the one thing you can do that makes all your other problems go away or unnecessary? And what he means by unnecessary is unnecessary to either be done then or by you.
Mm.
And it's pricing. So most people price, somebody suggested it. This is what my competition charges, when they're really not your competition. They're just someone who does it as well as you do or alongside you. Or it's what they believe, in quotes, that my clients afford or can afford. And those three reasons, if you're doing it, are a recipe for maybe I'm successful, maybe not, because it's guesswork. And I take the guesswork out of it. And so for years, I was really good with numbers, and I would take you through it, or I'd take somebody else through it. And about midway through, it was deer in the headlights, right? Because I'm working so fast in my brain, but people couldn't keep up with me. And then when I tried to go back and explain it, it was too late. The water was muddy. And so it took me, I've been doing this 15 years, and it took 14 years to come up with this visual version that I have now, where I can take you through your actual numbers, your expenses, all of them. And I'll tell you right now, at least 10%, and I'm being very nice today, you're not considering 10% of your expenses, probably, at least. But you take all of your expenses, what it costs you to do business, you take what you're going to be paid, and you factor all of those things in to come up with your bottom line pricing. Because there's either going to be two things. It's either just pricing that makes the difference, or it's pricing and the balance of customers that you handle. As a coach, like in you too, it's how many, we can only handle so many one-on-one clients.
That's right.
So that number has to be known. What's the maximum I can do? Because your pricing has to reflect that number to be able to afford your expenses and afford the lifestyle that you choose to have from this business. And if you don't know that number, it's guesswork, or you're doing churn. And one of these days you're going to find out, like COVID. My guess, and I was talking to somebody else who knows pricing pretty well, is at least a third of the businesses, 33% of the ones that went under because of poor pricing, not because business was terrible.
Interesting. Well, and that, I mean, it illustrates how often people are just not looking in the right places, right? And it's fascinating how challenging pricing is for people on their own if they're not looking at the right things. So this is one of the places that you often start with people, right? Because I know that this is a big thing you've been focusing on. Where else are people getting business wrong? Like, I know you do a lot more than just pricing, right?
Yeah, once you have your pricing in place, then you know this is what I have to charge today. But what's really cool about this visual aspect of it, this calculator, is that we can forecast your growth. We can add your next assistant. We can add your next programs. We can add your increase in your pay. And you can see this is exactly what I have to charge. And this is where the magic light bulb comes on, because you think that it's so much more that you have to do it. Oh, I'm going to have to double my prices. And you realize it's most times very insignificant. It can be as little as a $20 to $30 increase in what you're charging now, when you know your numbers that will pay for your next assistant in growth. And then my work from that point on is, let's get that in place so that in 90 days you can initiate your growth. And then it's focusing on those growth strategies. So it's about you being a better manager of others, knowing how to lead a project, being a project manager, and then grooming your replacements. The ideal situation for all of us would be that 30% of our business or less is dependent on us doing the work. Because then, like you, we can take a 2-week vacation and come back, and business is still flowing, income is still in place, and we have it. And as a coach, you start out just, it's time for dollars. I'm giving my time and it's for dollars. And so there has to be some leverage of that. So it goes from one-on-one usually to group programs or things of that, and then maybe recorded programs if you're fortunate enough to have it. But having those different streams is not only important, but you have to know how to price it in and how to make it happen. And that's what I'll do. I'll take it in increments, but we first focus on pricing, then on management, then on project leadership, and then on how to let go, which is one of the things that I'm working on the whole time. The mindset piece of us as entrepreneurs who jump in it in a moment's notice and get it done. And how do we let all of that go and trust that it's going to happen?
Yeah, I could see, even for myself, right? Challenges along that journey. You must have a lot of light bulb moments with your client or your clients in the phase of showing them how to plan for a hire and how to afford it. Because I know that that's one of the things that keeps small businesses from growing at the pace that they should.
Yeah, it's in my guess, it's about 50% of the reason they hesitate or don't do it. They don't think they can afford it yet.
Yeah.
And it's probably 40 to 60% of the time, Heather, when I go through the numbers with them, they're already there. They're at that point where with just a minor adjustment, they can get into growth phase and start setting themselves free. And one of the things to work with me is you have to take some time off. If you don't, I won't work with you. And it just because the most successful people that I've read about, when they're doing their yearly planning, they plan their time off, their vacations, time with family, whatever it is, and then they plan their work in that order. Because when push comes to shove, you're a mom, you're
I'm a mom,
spouse.
so right. And I feel like the mom part forces me to do this, what you're talking about, right? Because the first thing that happens each year, and I'm in Seattle, the Seattle School District publishes the next year's calendar. Guess what I'm doing? I'm getting all those dates on my calendar. I know exactly when we've got breaks, when kids are out of school, right? I say that, and then today is a funny day because my kids are out of school and I didn't know it. I learned earlier this week. Yeah, we got it covered. But for the most part, if it's on the school calendar, it is on my calendar like well before the school year even begins. And so I'm planning my whole next year based around the school year, based around breaks. But the benefit to me is I'm getting all of our vacations on the books. I'm getting our prioritized family time on the books. It actually feels like a really fun way to plan because I know about all the fun times that we're planning for, right? And then you're right, work fits around that.
Yeah, well, and like you've experienced too, what happens is we figure out a way to make it work, and it does. When you have a plan in place to do that, and when you're really firm, because what a lot of people do is they'll say they're going to do vacations and they're going to do this. And for me, my first 10 years, oh yeah, we went to Costa Rica. And what did Jacob do? He'd be up in the room looking out at this beautiful place working, right? Oh, go have fun without me. Or one of the reasons that I became a coach was because I remembered sending my family to Disney World. We lived in Ohio at the time, sending them to Disney World twice without me because I was going to do the work, right? So that they could go. And they didn't want the money. They didn't want the nice hotel. They wanted me to be there with them. Yeah. And you can make up for stuff that you don't do, but you can't make up that time. They will never be that age again and have that experience. And so I made it a mission for me to make sure, and that's why I demand, right, that you take time off or I won't work with you.
Oh,
it's not about that.
Totally. And it's, the example that you provided is so poignant. I can kind of feel hearts breaking all over the place that are listening to this.
Mine too.
Like, oh, I know the feeling of being on vacation and being like, I'll catch up with you, or I've just got to do that, whatever. Like, even we had an unusual week because my son was gone for 4 days on a trip to Mount Rainier, and I went to the UK for 10 days. And so I've had a little bit of catch up to do, still some work to catch up on. But last night was the first night that Aiden was home with us, and he wanted to do a little family movie. So we did, right? We let him choose a cartoon. He chose Brother Bear, which is one we love. And he's a real like spiritual nature connected kid. And so anyways, we watched that show, and I knew I had a couple client emails to get to that I could not finish before the day, right?
Mhm.
But do you think he let me off the hook doing those emails while he wanted us to have family time watching the show? It was like,
Well,
no, mom, when are you going to close your laptop so that you can watch? Like, he cared so much that I see the parts of the show that he was just waiting, like next to me, like, okay, when are you going to close that laptop? And it really is that important to our families and to our kids that we be available for those moments.
well, it is. And if you just read between the lines of that, how important it is for our kids to have our attention. And you
Yes.
never want to get to the point where they give up on that. And a lot
Mm-mm.
of people do. I know mine did for a while, and I had ground to make up. Um, and fortunately, I had a little bit enough time to do it, but too many. Like, we don't regret what we do, we regret what we didn't get to.
Yeah.
That's it. And so with business, we can have everything. You just have to have number one, we need help. We can't do this alone. We have to hire, if it's not me for a coach or guide or whatever, there's a ton of other really, really good people out there. Make sure that you connect with that person. It doesn't have to be the most polished person. It has to be the person that you connect with the deepest, that you believe can take you to that next step. And they will if you show up.
Yes.
And the other thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we're consciously aware of what's really important for us, because it's so easy to get reactive. And there's always something for us to do in our business. I could sit on my couch every single night with my iPad and work until 11 o'clock at night. But through my other life experience and with my wife, every day is important and no day is promised.
Mm.
And I got the gift of being able to be aware of that before it was too late. So now every day is a gift. And I
Mm.
make sure when we're together, I'm present, and everything's important in
Yeah.
relation to being together. And so that watching TV and not talking can be one of the most beautiful experiences of my day.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's why time off is important.
Well, it's massive. And I know, I mean, even you just mentioning that piece of it, I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, you've had to, walk the talk for many years. And I know your recent path. And for those of you listening, Jacob and his wife, Tina, have really like been through it the last handful of years. And so you've had to show up at a whole new level, right, for your life partner. And I'm sure again, balancing work, balancing schedules, like doing all of that so that and I know your values and I know how you demonstrate your values. And it's really something to behold and a reminder to all of us. And me in particular as a mom, where sometimes I forget, like, I have choices, right? I have choices. I get to choose what goes on my calendar. I get to choose whether I properly allocate my time or my effort or my resources. And I think it's sometimes easy to feel a little bit victim to just the weight of all the roles and forget that we have choices in all of this.
Yeah, we do. And what we see as priorities are really important. If we slow down enough to ask the question, how important is this in the scheme of my life today?
Yes.
Someone can wait for, yeah, it'd be
Yes.
great to get an email on time, but in the other side of it, if I have a client who can't understand that a family situation showed up and that was important and they can't wait, they're not the ideal person anyway. Like, there is so much business out there. That's why when I said you price like my competition,
Mhm.
we didn't get in business to compete against to put somebody else out. right? We got in business because we had this great idea and we're pretty good at what we do and we get better as we do more of it. So that competitive thing, we have to just slow down enough to just become aware. And I work from home. Many of us do now. And one of the things that I do when I get done, because my wife's in another room, she's home now, she had to retire. And there's days where she's just not talking to anybody. So as soon as she hears that door open, she's got questions. She wants to talk. And a lot of times I've been talking all day. And so what do I want to do? I don't want to talk. But I've learned, because each day is precious and no day is promised. I do this thing now. And before I open the door, I stop and I go, how do I choose to feel when I walk out of this room? Right. So I choose to feel loving, conversational, calm, relaxed, like joyous. And I'll tell you, it makes a big difference, because I used to go out and she'd be like, boom, boom, boom. And I'd be like, oh man, could you just wait a few minutes? Like, I need to wind down. And she'd be like, all right, I'll wait. I've been waiting 8 hours. I'll wait a little longer. You know, she wouldn't say that, but I could feel it. And so again, we do get to choose. It's like, how do you show up for a client? You know, I had some traumatic things. I'll just share real briefly. My wife had a double lung transplant. And for a year and a
folks,
half,
this was in the middle of COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. But
it was crazy.
A year and a half prior to that, or 2.5 years prior to that, she was going down steadily and constant, like visits to doctors and tests and everything. Because to get on a transplant list, it's a year of a battery of tests, because even at optimal health, you have a 50% chance you're not going to make it. So that's a whole nother story. But how do you deal with that and still work and not bring the stress into your work?
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to do, but you can.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is about letting go and being aware too. And a lot of that is why I have in my logo mindset coaching, because it does take mindset. Like we said in the beginning, right, Heather, it's what a journey this is on introspection and knowing yourself.
Oh, 100%. And, and I love even the piece that you mentioned about, like, if your client can't deal with the fact that family comes first, or that something then they're not the right client. And I've had to learn this on my own journey about being really clear about who I am, about the priorities in my life, right? And that includes my clients and my family, but also speaking up about it so that people know I'm a mom first. Something comes up for my kid, or they're sick and I get a phone call from the school, I'm probably not going to make our call. And if I have clients that's a huge problem for, you're right. Like, it's so clear to me, they're not the right client for me. And it's a reminder that we do get to create businesses that support our life and not the other way around.
Yeah. It's so important to understand what you just said, because there's never been a better time to be able to live up to that standard. Because COVID, the gift side of COVID was social media blew up and everybody realized, if I'm on it, I can benefit.
Oh, right.
I'm active on LinkedIn, as a lot of people know. And since COVID, it used to be about 10-20% of my business would drive from LinkedIn. And I put a lot of time, energy, and effort, spent money to learn it, did all those things. But it was still about 10-20% of my business. And as things grew and progressed, and after COVID, it's now about 60%.
That's amazing. And by the way, if you're not already connected with Jacob on LinkedIn, you could probably go hire him for coaching just on that point alone. You get so much interaction on your LinkedIn posts, right? And engagement. I mean, it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, thanks. It's a journey, and it's a commitment, just like anything else is.
Totally.
But it's never been a better time to be on whatever social media is best for you. And that's one of the things that you want to be aware of is it used to be like, well, if I'm on it, it's a benefit. Now you have to be on it. There isn't really a choice, but in getting to that point that I said about what you had just said is we get to choose who we work with. because there's more choices now. We're global. Like I've worked with people on 5 continents, right? And I work from a bedroom converted into an office from Northern California, right? And I'm in this office more than I am outside, during the week. We can grow a global business / empire, whatever you want to call it, with the right strategy and the right commitment. But it also gives us a choice to be able to choose who we work with. And that should never be forgotten, because a lot of us will take on business for the money, not for the real intention that we set out for.
Right. Well, and you speak about the gifts of COVID. I mean, I think one of the other ones that for me felt like a gift is we also get to show up more realistically. People were forced into it, right? Suddenly you were being a parent and running your business at the same time or whatever. And so we had all of these other things in our lives that quickly became very obvious to others. And it's like, why were we ever hiding it to begin with, right? Or why were we ever pretending that we didn't have a sick kid in the background or whatever, right? So I think that's the other gift is I really do believe we get to show up more real. It's a little bit like, we got on camera today and I'm like, hi, Jacob, I'm in mom mode, right? I had kids home all day and we went to the park and I told myself when I launched this podcast, I'm not going to let mom mode get in the way of me not coming on live and recording a podcast, showing up for my guests and, making sure that I'm consistent with this. And so we get to do the same in our businesses. And I really think that is a gift.
Yep,
but
it is.
We have to remember, right, that we have that choice.
Yep. And then we have to act on it, because it's one thing to be aware of it. Awareness is like learning something in a new book. If we don't implement it, it's just awareness. It's like, it sounded good, or I agreed with it, but nothing's happening. And a lot of times it's because we have to take those steps and we have to kind of check in with ourselves, right? Which is, we don't do as much. We check in with everyone else, but we have to ask ourselves these important questions like, like when I leave my office, how do I choose to feel? Not how am I feeling? How do I choose to feel when I leave this office?
I love that question. I mean, that really demonstrated the power of that single question. Your visual and your story of you being at home with Tina. I know that there's a lot around mindset that you work with your clients. What's one of the biggest pieces that you spend time on? Obviously, we talked about pricing. Yep. Right. We've talked about the ways that we think about business and where it fits in our life, but I know you do a lot of work around mindset. So what else do we need to know about your work?
Well, a lot of it, we dig deep when it shows up. And there's a lot of things that we don't even realize until they show up, and somebody can become aware of them and address them, that hold us back, that keep us limited, that stop us from moving forward or doing something. It's not always just about prices.
Totally.
And it's about using a ton of life experience, a ton of learning over, now over 30 years, being in self-improvement and taking, I used to be in the 90s, I was one of those junkies, man, that went from event to event, right? And some of it I actually implemented.
Right.
So, but the mindset piece about how to show up as a leader first to yourself, and then it's easier to do it with other people. And it's also about how to take that self-management that becomes instinctual, and how to be able to put that out there to our team, and be able to do that. So the mindset piece is from day one until we stop. Right. The nice part about the way that I work with people is that there's a progression of results that show up, and they're not all monetary, but that progression leads to longevity. And one of the things that I'm probably most proudest of for the work that I do is the amount of clients that I have and the length of time that I've been working with them. I have currently 7 clients that I work with that I've worked with for 5 years, and I have 2 over 8 years that I've worked with.
Amazing.
They
well, you're
pay
right.
me money every month like for years.
Because
And
they
so
get results. That's right. That's
it's
why
not because
people
they like
stick
me.
around, which
Right.
no doubt they do.
I'm glad they do, but just because you like me doesn't mean you're going to send me checks.
Right, right. No, it's true. It really speaks to the consistent results that you help people achieve. Talk to us a little bit about who your clients are. Who do you help? Who are your favorite clients to help?
Um, I used to, you hear about who's your ideal client. I used to
Mm.
focus on an avatar, and every time I would choose one, the opposite happened. So, so I
The
realized that
universe is like, haha.
yep, you're not made to work with just this group of people. So I'm problem oriented. If
Hmm.
you've had your business and you've reached that level of success where you're doing it, you're affording life, you're paying for it, you have either a one man or a one person team or a multiple person team, but it's working. But you're at a point where you realize that growth has to happen, or you'd like it to happen, or you're not making enough money, but you're working way too hard. That's
Yes.
my ideal person. Because first, the pricing takes care of that. I'm working way too hard, not getting paid. I can't afford the growth. I show you quickly within 30 days how that can start changing right away. And then the work begins. See, it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to implement it. And that's where the
Totally.
work begins. So that's the ideal group person that shows up. And it could be, I've worked with people with one person businesses up to 50 employee businesses on my sweet spots. It's usually
Mm-hmm.
1 to 10, somewhere in that range, but up to 50. And I've worked with some corporate execs over the years that just showed up. I didn't pursue them. But it's more problem oriented where you're just too busy to make it happen, or
Yes.
you can't afford it and you're too busy and you feel like you've created a job. And this is a thought I used to have. So if you're thinking this, we should talk. I used to think, and I could go work at McDonald's and make more money than I'm making here. That was my own
Mm,
business.
that's so painful to hear.
It was true. And
Yeah.
so I can't tell you how many people in private tell me, Jacob, I'm struggling, I'm barely making it. And on the surface, you look at them and they're like, oh my God, you're kidding me, because they're influencers or they have this persona that they built and they're just afraid to get real with it. And I'm just telling you, and you focused on this a little bit, especially since COVID, the more real we are and connected to where you're at today, maybe, or experience, the better relationships you will attract and the better quality of people you attract. People are looking for real things, not this polished, the old 60s IBM blue suit, white shirt, starch collar. Doesn't work anymore.
Mm-mm.
People are looking for someone who has been there, who has done it, who can take them out of it, but can still relate to them at that level. And a lot of those higher people forget what it was like because they have these big teams, or they do this thing, or they believe that persona they created. And then they go, oh, just do this, this, and this. Nah, it's so easy. You do that. And it's like, it's not that easy. It takes work. And that's a good segue to bring this out, right? Road tested. Yeah. And that's one of the things I always say is road tested, because experience is definitely an educator, and using it the right way can definitely help people accelerate their successes for sure.
Well, that's right. And you raise a really important point, even in the world of people hiring experts, right? About like how connected are to the specific point in your journey that you're at and can help you out of that. There's a lot of people that are great at marketing that are not road tested, right? And it's really easy, I think, for folks to hire the wrong people just because somebody's super good at marketing or super good at sales. So if you're listening, connect with Jacob. Just go do it. I mean, already like we're hearing about the power of pricing for profit, how to do that the right way. And I think so many people get that wrong. Like I'm questioning my own pricing right now as we speak, right? I know you've got another resource, I think a blueprint. Did you want to tell us about a couple of other things that you have available or programs, which are some of the ways that you work with your clients?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm really excited about this one. This one's actually, I think it precedes my pricing formula, but
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like a CFO audit,
I
right? If
love
you had a
that.
CFO come in, they focus on usually around 5 areas of your business. Like a couple of them are leads and conversions. And so, but I figured out, and then I was able, because I created this other calculator to get someone to help me create another one, which these 5 simple areas that we all focus on, if you increase them by only 10%, your revenues increase by, on average, 40+%, and your profits increase on average 50% plus, usually in the 60% range. And all of this can be put into place within 30 days. So I've been doing a test beta workshops. I did one 2 weeks ago and I did one 3 weeks prior to that. And every single person, I have testimonials coming out that will share how impactful it was and how amazing it is. But I take people on that journey. So I take you through the workshop. And then here's my promise, because I believe in this so much, that anyone that comes with me after the workshop to work with me for 30 days, if you don't have these things in place, these strategies implemented, these 5 areas and 10% increase, I'll not only give you back all your money, but I'll keep working with you for free until you do. And I don't offer a guarantee because I want to pay it back.
Mm.
I offer it because I'm really confident if you show up and do the work, I know it works every time. And many people that show up to do this, within 2 weeks, they have all these things in place. And imagine you have this tool for the rest of your working life, that when things need to increase a little bit, you have a tool that you can implement with just a 10% increase, right? That will increase your revenues by 40% and your profit by 50 to 60. And one of the areas is leads. So as a quick example, if you get 10 leads a month, could you get one more lead a month? That's a 10% increase. A quarter of a lead a week, right? Like, you just kind of, one more phone call, one more follow-up, one more email, one more ask for a referral, which is a good tip, by the way, because 85% of us don't ask for one.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, you've already in a couple minutes thrown out so many things that I know people are going like, oh, maybe I'm not tracking my leads like I should. Maybe I need to look a little further into conversions, right? But
Absolutely.
just go check this out. What is the name of your blueprint and how do people get access to it? Is it the workshop? Tell me what it
Yep.
is.
The easiest way is I'll share a link, but you can schedule an appointment with me, and what I'll offer to your group, because I only can do about 6 of these a month because it just time wise.
Right.
But
Yes.
I give what I call a pricing CFO audit. So
Ah,
it's the same thing that a CFO would come in and do for you for an expense. We're going to audit the 5 areas, see what you're doing, and see where you're at from the money perspective.
mm,
And what you'll leave with is a sound strategy that lets you know I have to focus on these areas. And then I'll share, even as a little bonus, one area that you can start and give you 2 or 3 suggestions that are really easy to implement.
love that. Yeah, that's amazing. Folks, we will share the link over to that in the show notes, along with the link to your website, right? Which is it your name, Jacob? Remind
Yep.
me what your website link is. Yep,
jacobroig.com.
jacobroig.com. We will share the link to the audit opportunity, and obviously that's a limited opportunity. Can't do that for everyone. But go check it out if this is at all interesting to you, and it should be. Also, Jacob, I know you're on LinkedIn. Is that where you prefer to connect with people?
You can either reach out if you're active on social media and LinkedIn, then absolutely that's a way. But a real easy email is jacob@jacobroig.com.
Perfect.
You
And we
just
will,
send me an email, I respond, or my assistant will respond to each one.
awesome. Love that. We will share your email as well. Again, you can find all of this at the show notes page, which is legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Look for Coach Jacob Roig's episode. And there are 2 of them, right? There's episode 19, but this will be the more recent one. Um, Coach Jacob, it's just so good to see you. I feel like, even when we talk and even things that we've talked about before, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go revisit that. I need to probably look into that again. So I just really appreciate you. I appreciate you coming back on to have this conversation. I know that you do amazing work. And so I'm so grateful that people who may be hearing from you for the first time today get to connect and follow you and hopefully connect with you in a few different places. What final either tidbit or action step would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Just understand that the growth or success that you desire, if you're not there and you're feeling like you're wondering if it's not, that it's so much closer than you imagine. And with just a few little steps or a few little tweaks to what you're doing can make the whole difference, but that you can't do it on your own. So seek out some help because it's required. It doesn't have to be real expensive. It just has to be connected. And make sure that you're asking for the help, because a lot of us feel that we have to do it on our own, and you don't. You're not alone.
Oh, I love that. And it's such a reminder also that at each new phase, we need more help or new help or maybe different help, right? To get to the next. So it's not a one and done either. Folks, connect with Jacob. You will not regret it. Go follow him. I would love for you to connect with him on LinkedIn because you will enjoy even just observing his LinkedIn strategy. But Jacob, so great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Been my honor. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.